Thanks, Jim. So the ALM team has been working with the change management team to enable automated change request approvals, opening and closing of change requests as part of your release and deployment workflow. You can find the documentation here on integration point on that. Just go to the home page, ALM, and continuous integration. I'm sorry, that was the wrong one.
Me too, I use that as well.
Why does it do that? Oh no, that was the right one. Continuous integration and deployment, and this top one here, how to configure Anthill and TFS to use Servicenow automated change request. So the Servicenow team, the change request team, is going to be rolling out automation change request templates that you can go and get approved for, and this will allow you to not have to go to the cab and get approval. You'll be pre-approved, and your release process will open the change request, and your deployment will go through, and at the end it will close the change request. And this page tells you how to go ahead and do that. To get a change, automated change request template, please contact David Clay. At the moment, he's working on a form to fill out so that he would, you guys can go to a form instead of contacting him, but that's not ready yet. In TFS, it's really simple. We've created 2 tasks that you just add to your release. It's actually one task, but you have to add it twice. The first time you'll want to open your change, enter your standard change template here, and then put all of your other deployment tasks. And at the end, be sure to add this a second time and tell it to close. This will go in and create a change form. You will open it and close it and put in some information here. It will put in the URL to your release so that auditors can go back and look there. This is a first version of this task. The second, we're working on noticing if your change or if your release fails and updating the change record to show that, as well as updating logs. Yeah, you have a question?
Do you expect the TFS flow to also work for VSTS? There's no reason it shouldn't, right?
This task is not in Azure DevOps, which is a new name. Wait a week and it'll be different. But this task isn't there yet. They have to change their API so that we don't have to use basic auth. I don't want to save the password in Azure DevOps. They are working on OAuth for this API. So it's not there yet, but it should be. It's on their backlog, the Servicenow team's backlog. But this feature is not yet in Azure DevOps. Any other questions? So this should allow you to not have to go to the cab. If you get an approved template, you just add this to your release. It will go and create a change request for you. You do your deployment, and it will close the change request, and everybody will sing and be happy. Okay, any other questions? Thank you. Thanks
Thanks, David.
Tony.
All right, let's see. First thing I want to do is try something a little crazy here. Let me see if I can get this to work. Okay, this is a little laggy, but I'm going to try and show you anyway. What I wanted to share with you first, before we get into .NET tips and tricks, is one real valuable tip or trick, and this works on both iOS and Android. That's one of the undiscovered features. Nope, not that. This. So let's see. I like to just do things like type in just let it write sentences for me. I have no idea what it's saying, but it's going to be great. But sometimes I need to go back and fix a word. And there's a cool feature in iOS and Android. On iOS, if you long press on the space bar, you'll get a cursor that you can move around the screen to drop the cursor wherever you want it to go. And on Android, similar, except instead of a hard press or a long push, you just kind of swipe across the space bar and you can move that around. So if you didn't know that, that's been a feature that's been well hidden for quite a while. So that's my number one tip and trick. If you learn nothing else today, hopefully that one will be helpful for you.
Does that work on the Windows Phone as well?
It certainly does not, because the Windows Phone never needed that, because it came with an acupoint. So you just press on that acupoint. But no, and it was discoverable. It wasn't a hidden feature, which was kind of nice. Okay, enough of that. All right, well, glad that everybody's here. Knew it would be a little bit light before the holiday season, and that's just fine, because we're gonna go through this as quickly as we can and try to get. What I did is I've spent the last couple of months kind of collecting a bunch of different tips and tricks, knowing that we'd have this engineering forum coming up in December, and then I've tried to stitch that together in a pattern that will hopefully make some sense and some flow to it. So wish me luck. Here we go. So the first thing is, I've learned a lot of different languages over my career. C# is most definitely probably quickly, slowly becoming my fastest favorite one. That's what my son always says, something stupid like that. But it's a very powerful language. I did learn 2 scripting languages this year, BrightScript, which was an interesting one. And I also learned TypeScript earlier this year and used it on a project. But still love C#. It's a powerful and elegant language, and we're going to look at some tips and tricks. And the first thing we want to do is let's go ahead and start by creating, and some of this is going to be pretty basic for you, so just hang with me until we get into more of the meat of it. But let's see. Oops. Get my function keys off. Okay, there we go. We're going to add a person class. And then in the person class, I'm going to add, let's just put an empty constructor. And let's do a public string name. Okay. So we've added a field called name. Notice it's a field, not a property. So let's get rid of this hello.net engineering forum. And we'll just new up this person class. Okay. And notice I can access the name property and put something in it like underman, right? Okay. And it behaves very similar to a property, but it is a little bit different. We'll look at some of those differences here in just a minute. If we wanted to, we could print this out. Console, right line, actually person, that name. And I won't run it because we know kind of what that's going to do. It'll just print out Wonderman, so that's not interesting. We'll keep going. Okay, so the next thing we do is let's add some properties so we can see what they look like when they're different. And I'm going to use the shortcut for that.
So did you just type in prop and then hit tab twice?
I sure did. Okay, so we've got 2 properties in here, first name and last name. Now, a property is actually something called an accessor method. It has a getter and a setter. And in this particular instance, where I'm not explicitly doing anything with the getter set, these are called auto-implemented properties, just in case you wanted to name your code. That's what you can do. So if we go back to programs.
I call my code all kinds of names.
Yes, I do too.
Especially when it doesn't work right.
This is G-rated, so let's not talk about that. Okay, first name, we're going to put Bob, and last name we'll call him. All right, so from this point of view, really there's no difference here. You can see name, and we'll just add, I won't do all of these, but Let's go ahead and run that much. Wonder Man Bob, right? Yay. Let's not be clapping all through it. This, okay. So why use a property then? If it works exactly like a field at this point, why would we want to use a property? Well, properties give us some more control that we don't get with fields. So if I go to person, let's add another property, and we'll do string, and let's add a full name property. And we're not going to need a setter for full name. We're just going to do a get, and we're just going to return first name, rest turn. If I make big mistakes, you guys got to help me here, because live coding while standing up. Although I'm going to get better at that because I bought a new standing desk for home, so we'll see. I'll get better at standing up and coding. Okay, so I've added this property called full name. It only has a getter in it. So if I go back to programs now, I can see that I have person.fullname there. And if I want to set it to something else like full name, it's not going to work. My ID is going to say, hey, you can't do that. This cannot be assigned to. It's a read-only property because I only have a getter. So, okay, cool. That's one thing we can't do with fields is make them read-only very easily. Okay. So if let's run this here. We'll output full name. Again, this isn't earth-shattering to anybody, I would assume yet, but okay. Wonder Man Bob Woodward. So we got full name out. Okay, that's pretty cool. And I'm getting a very important solicitation call right now, and I love those. They start. This is not a solicitation. Totally is if you start with that, right? Okay. So let's add another property in here, and this time we're going to add gender. So okay, and this time we're going to make gender a private set. So we have a getter and a setter. So let's go back to our program and let's see if we can set gender. And say, all right, okay, it won't let me set it. How come? Well, we got an error similar to the other one, but this one's a little bit different. It doesn't say it's read-only. It says you cannot be used in this context because the set accessor is inaccessible. Because we made it private, we can't set it from out here. We can only set it from within the class. So let's modify our person class to take a gender. We can set it within the class, so we can certainly do that inside the constructor. And so if we want to set the gender now, because we've made that a private accessor, we can only set it through either a method that we create or internally in the class somehow. In this case, we can set it by passing it in through the constructor. So then if we run this here, Wonder Man Bob Woodward is a male. Yay. Okay.
Are you sure you want that to be a string, though?
That's a good question. String might be a little bit too loose. I mean, we are pretty loose with our genders these days, but let's strict that up a little bit.
Are you suggesting that genders aren't binary?
I'm not suggesting anything, but you can. Let's add gender types, and what I want to do is create this as an enumeration, right? So let's go male, male. I don't know why it wants to do that. Male and female. Now we'll go back to our person class, and instead of being a string, we will say, let's use the enumeration instead. Now we're going to get a squiggly here. Let's change this to accept the enumeration type coming in, and if we go back to our program, now person says, hey, this doesn't accept a string anymore. You must pass a gender type of male or female. Now, when we run this, enumerations are, if they're implemented as, like what you said, some sort of numeric behind that, an integer of some sort. So what is the value of male? 0, and female is 1, right? So if we run this, when we output to the console, what do we expect person.gender to return?
0.
Is that what you think?
Totally gonna be, I'm 100%, wait.
And you didn't remember, you didn't pay attention
Oh,
during our dry run yesterday. No, enumerations are cool. Even though they're stored as numerics, when we output them to the console like that, we'll see the string version of it male. So that's pretty cool.
But they are integers.
They are integers. They are indeed integers. So one of the things we want to do with our gender, though, is we want to allow for some future expansion. So we're going to space those out. We're going to let male equal 20 and female, or 10 and female equal 20. In the future, if we have something in between male and female, we could put them squarely at 15. So you never know what could happen, right? So if we were to run this again, it would still say gender is male, but if we wanted to take a look at what the value of that is, we can cast this as an integer. And we will see that we have male, and the integer equivalent value of that is 10. So if we were to store that in a database somewhere, that's the value that will get stored as the number 10. Okay? So far, so good. Really? Nothing exciting going on yet.
Do you have to cast it when you store it in the database? Or
No, you don't have to cast it when you store it in the database. Something underneath all the covers will probably do that for you. Or when you serialize it to JSON, for instance, it also will serialize out to that numeric value as well. So good question. All right, continuing on. Now let's look at one other type of property. And I don't know what to call this other than like the full property. And I'm going to create one called title. And I'm going to put a backing variable behind this. So with a backing variable, this is the fully implemented version of a property. This is what's really happening under the covers when you do an auto-implemented property with just a get and set. The compiler is automatically creating a backing variable for you and building all this out. The nice thing about auto-implemented properties, though, is it's a little bit more concise and you don't have to go through and create all this. So, who's doing this? Set underscore title equals value. Okay, so that's what a fully implemented property sort of looks like without these extra semicolons in here. And to make that look a little better, let's format this a little nicer. Okay. So the benefit to that is that allows us to do inspection whenever we go to get a value or set a value. We can put extra code in there to kind of inspect that and do other things with it if we need to. So in this particular case, let's go back to the programs first and let's see how it appears. You're going to see that it doesn't look any different when we go to use it, right? So if I have title and I'll set Mr., right? Looks the same as all the other properties when you go to use it, and frankly it'll look the same when we go to output it as well. So let's okay. Now let's say that, for instance, we wanted to always assume that when we have the word Mr. spelled out, we wanted to change that to MR period. We can do this by creating a private method within our class called sanitizeTitle. And what we'll do is we'll just say return incoming. We'll replace anytime we see the word Mr. with MR period. And let's use a string comparison type of, which one do you guys want to use? How about invariant culture ignore case? Sounds like a good one. Okay. Then all we have to do is say, before we actually set the value in our backing field, we're going to run it through our sanitize title.
Where is the culture invariant? Is that where you went on your mission, the invariant?
Yes, that's where I went. That's where I live. Okay. So now you'll see it automatically converted. Although we passed in the word Mr., we get MR period back. Okay. So that's the benefit of using properties, is you can do stuff like this. All right, so again, we haven't done too much here that's really too crazy or exciting, but let's go back and let's look at our full name field here. Full name, I want to add title to that, and I could add title just inside of here, but I want to demonstrate something called, what the heck is this called? I don't remember what it's called, but I'm going to use a fat arrow or a lambda, or a new one that I created, plus arrow. Don't know what that is. Okay, so this is just a little bit cleaner, newer syntax that we can use. If we use the fat arrow, it's the same as doing the curly brace, get, another curly brace, the return, and all of that. But we can remove the curly braces, remove the get, and simplify it so it looks a little bit cleaner. So now if we go and run our program, we don't need to add the person title on the end here, because we're already picking that up. Right, and we should just get Wonder Man, Mr. Bob Woodward, male, 10. Okay, so that's kind of a newer syntax. How many people have already started using that syntax in their code? Anybody? Nobody? Okay, well, it's actually kind of nice. It's a little cleaner. It's a little bit easier to read. Fewer curly braces. So that's something you might want to look at using. So that was our first tip and trick there. So the next thing we want to do here is we want to, actually not there, we want to go here. I'm going to add a couple more properties. And this one's going to be a date time, and this one's going to be modified date. And we're going to do a, now how many people have these kind of fields in some of their classes?
Datetime fields, yeah.
Datetime fields with a modified and a create date, right? Anytime, a lot of times if we're storing to SQL Server or whatever, we have that. Well, you can automatically set a default value for these guys by just putting an equal sign after the property.
Do you just randomly type stuff and see if Visual Studio takes it? Is that how you learn these things?
That's how I do it. I'm like, I wonder if I just type this, would it take it? Or I read on the internet. It's a big book out there online. It's pretty cool. Okay, so this is setting a default property for a property. And you can do this, and the nice thing about it is, if you don't supply a property in the program, or if you don't if you don't provide a value for the property, it will automatically just grab that default value. But you can override it. So let's go in here and just say, I'm going to change the modified date to be, yeah, I need my real keyboard back. Datetime.utc now.add, let's add, I don't know, 3 days. So we're going to modify it 3 days in the future, just so we can see what it looks like. Okay, now if we run this guy, I didn't set a value for created date, but because we have the auto-implemented, or the default value set, it automatically set it to today, 12:20, and then UTC time, and then 12:23 UTC time. Okay, so that's a pretty helpful thing to do, is have those default properties. Okay, I'm getting tired of typing out these person modified date plus quote space quote plus, and although I'm getting pretty proficient at it, I don't want to be proficient at that. So what would be really nice is if we could just do this, console.writeLine, and say person.toString. Hey, guess what? Every object implements toString. There's a toString method on it. So this is going to be great, right? Tips, tricks.person. Not exactly what I was hoping for. Okay, so the good news is every object implements a toString method. The bad news is the default implementation is pretty useless. The good news, the other good news is we can override it. So let's just do that. Let's write our own implementation of toString.
You lost a semicolon.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is just return title plus, in fact, I'm not even going to do that. Let's just do full name plus, and then we'll add let's add the gender on there. Oh my goodness, who's typing? Somebody else's turn. Come take over. Okay, so now we have a ToString method there, and if we run this, we'll turn this one off because we don't need that anymore.
Hey, you had a green squiggly there.
What?
I was
Oh.
trying to warn you about something.
Mr. Bob Woodward, male. Cool. What green squiggly?
On your override.
Your class. Yeah,
Over here?
yeah.
What's that for?
It says, I already know what that is. I already got one of those.
Oh, it says person.toString is hiding an inherited member from object.toString. To make the current member override the implementation, add the override keyword. Well, it worked, so obviously it didn't need it. But if we want the squirrely to go away, we can add override.
That's cleaner.
Okay. So, all right, so we're doing pretty good here. Now, one thing I noticed though is it's getting harder to tell, like, which are actual fields and which are not actual fields. So I'm going to go back here. What I want to do is I want to be able to see where those fields are separated. So I'm going to do a comma delimited representation, or a comma separated. So let's implement something called to comma string. And this time I'm going to say return first name plus, I put a space here, last name plus, comma, and gender. All right. And I guess I could put title in there too. Which is why we want to implement that, because typing that over and over again is really annoying. So we'll compare these. We'll do a console.write line person.to comma string, which is clearly not an implemented thing anywhere, but we implemented it. There we go. Now we can see where the fields are separated. We got Mr., Bob, Woodward, and Male. They're all comma separated. That's pretty cool, but I don't have all the fields in there, and I'm getting tired of writing out all those fields every time we add new fields. So let's implement something better. Let's do to comma delimited. Delimited, right? And what I want to do instead is I want to let's use reflection. Okay, now everybody hang with me here and help me, because I don't often write code with reflection. So let's see if I can do this. I'm going to do a for each pinfo in this class, right? I'm going to get its type, and then I want to get its properties. And we're going to loop through those properties. And I'm going to say output plus equals pinfo dot name. Yeah, name. Plus, quote, colon space, quote, plus pinfo dot get value of this plus this. Did I do that right so far? And then I'm going to return output. All right, so now we have this to comma delimited. So let's run that one. Okay. Whew. There we go. Except this time it's I actually output the name of the field and the field value. So I'm using the kind of a key value pair with a colon separating between all of those, and we can see all those values outputted. So that's really nice. But here's the next trick that we can use here. Now I've got two implementations. I got to comma string and to comma delimited. And they're a little bit different, and one's definitely cooler than the other, and we like the reflection one. So what we want to do is tell people that we're not going to use to comma string anymore. So I'm going to let people know, cool people use the to comma delimited version, just saying. Right?
You spelled use wrong.
What? Cool people, us. That's important. You got to get that message just right. Okay. So now that I've put that on there, if I go back to program, you'll notice I get a green squiggly under 2 comma string, right? It says, hey, this is obsolete. Cool people use 2 comma delimited version, just saying. So that's really good message to tell to other developers. But the cool part about it is it does still build and it will still work. I'm just warning you that it's obsolete. But if I want to enforce that and I don't really want you to use it at all, then I can come in here and there is an optional parameter at the end and I can just say true. And if I set that to true, now that green squiggly becomes a red underline. It says this cannot be used. It's obsolete. You need to get off my lawn, right? And if I try to run it, it won't build. It will fail and say, no can do. So we're not going to use that anymore. So let's just get rid of those. We have the one we like. Okay, and I've noticed here with these key value pairs, we're just a hop, skip, and a step away from JSON. Yeah, so why don't we implement a JSON version? Let's do that, why not? Let's yell it out. And I'm not going to retype all this, we'll just copy this block in here. The biggest difference is we won't start empty. We'll start with a left curly brace. And then in between these guys, let's put, we need single quotes here. And then a single quote here. Now this isn't fully implemented JSON. It's what I call close enough JSON. And let's see. Yeah, how do we put that closed curly on? We need to do something like this. Output dot substring maybe? Substring. Start 0, output length, output dot length, and subtract 1. Then we'll add the closing curly brace on there and return the output. What are the odds this will actually work? To JSON. I don't recommend writing JSON by hand, by the way. Use a serializer, but we just want to see if we're cool enough to be able to do it. It's not bad. We got a comma at the end that's kind of pointless, but we can. It won't really work, but that's pretty close. So. If we just take this extra space out, then it probably will be okay, right? Ta-da! We just implemented JSON. That's really cool. Well, that's great and all, but JSON's not really useful to humans. It's great for computers, but I find it difficult to read. So instead, why don't we go in here and implement something like more readable for humans? Let's do that. We'll call it 2LF, line feeds. So for that, it's really darn close to this one. Except instead of commas, we'll do slash. Which slash is it? Is it this? Who's driving the bus? Okay. So let's try that one. We'll just get rid of this one and do 2LF. Use that one instead. And you tell me which one you like better.
Oh yeah.
Top one? The line feed one better? That's easier for us to read, right? First name Bob, last name Woodward, full name Mr. Bob Woodward, so on and so forth. JSON's great if we want to hand that to a computer, but we're going to keep LF around for now. Okay, so that's pretty cool. One other thing we want to do is I noticed when we implemented this, we kind of did it sort of old-fashioned. What we could do instead is use something called string interpolation. So let's use string interpolation instead. I think it'll make it just a bit cooler. It will show off the skills that we might have learned along the way. Okay, does that look better? and it will work exactly the same. But it's a little bit cleaner, not a bunch of pluses in between there. Okay, so string interpolation. All right, let's continue. Let's add a couple more properties now that we can output our properties cleanly without having to keep typing that garbage over and over. We're ready to rock and roll, and let's add another property. Let's come up here and let's add another date time object called birth date. And let's add another one called, oops, that was already int, age. All right, help me implement age here. I want age to be a function of the birth date that gets set, so I don't need a setter, right? I can just do a getter. What should we put in our getter? Okay, let's do that. In fact, we're too cool for getters, so let's just use our fat arrow, right? We'll do datetime dot, we'll go UTC minus the birth date. Oh, what's wrong here? It says cannot implicitly convert system time dot span to int. I was thinking about this. Time span is going to return. If I subtract those, I'm going to get the number of ticks from the time that you're born till now.
That's how we always work.
How old are you in ticks, Jim?
I'm 400,960.
I think you're buffer overflow is what you are on ticks, right? So, so what we really do is we subtract years. So let's just say year minus year, right? Okay, so that's year's an integer value. That's not totally correct.
Because what if you're
Well, what year is it now?
2018,
And when were you born?
1963.
So if we subtract those, we'll get what?
Depends on where my birthday, if it's already been when you run this. If my
Okay.
birthday's been already happened in this year or not.
So when's your birthday?
August 26th.
So it's past. This will work fine.
So it works.
It worked on my machine, right?
But what works on my machine?
August 25th.
Works on my birthday.
What if it's what?
August 25th when you run this.
It still works. Oh, if it was August 25th, it's not. Today's the 20th. This code was written to be run on December 20th. So, okay, fine. We can make it a little better. All right, let's try. Let's see. What I need to know
9?
is 9. No, let's try this again. You guys are so picky.
42.
Date time. I need to know if the day of the year. What is it? No, UTC. UTC now is the day of the year already passed. Day of year, right? If it has, then we'll implement that first part. So I'm using a ternary operator here, so I can write this all in one line. And if it's not passed, then you're not as old as you think you are. So we'll just say date time year minus birth date dot year. You're one less than that. Will that work? Well, let's try it out and see, I guess. So somebody give me a birth date. Person dot birth date. Okay, give me a birth date.
June 21st,
What is it, June 21st? What year?
1991.
1991. All right. Let's see what we get out. Whew. Age 27. Is that correct? Okay. Let's say it's today. Let's say it's somebody's birthday today, December 20th. How old will they be?
26.
26.
But today's their day, their birthday. They turn 27 today.
So how does that work in your
Past the
culture?
hour.
Past the hour?
A minute, second.
Depends on what hour you were born. Yeah.
Yeah, even though we don't really care about what time of day we were born, we sort of customarily say once the clock strikes midnight, right? You get to count that.
How about leap day?
Yeah, that's another story. But we're going to ignore that. We know that there's some problems here that we're going to just ignore for now. It isn't perfect, and there's some scenarios that don't quite make sense, but it's close enough, right? We can make it more robust, but it's pretty simple. What we demonstrated here was the fat arrow syntax for our property and the ability to use the ternary operator to kind of handle a couple of different conditions
There,
there.
fat arrow and the reverse of fat arrow, greater than or equal.
Yes, we use them both in one line. Isn't
That's
that
awesome.
cool? So, whew, it's crazy stuff. All right, enough with birthday. Let's move on. We need to add another type here. We want to know what kind of social media accounts they have. So I'm going to add a new enumeration, social media type, because this is one of the most important things we could ever do. And I'm not going to type all these in, so I'm going to just copy and paste a list. Oh yeah, we should make it an enum. Good point, Jim. So we'll make it an enum. Those are the only ones I care about. Yeah, I used a little snippet there, the cheat. Now I'm going to go back to person, and let's add here. This person's getting a lot of junk in here. It's great. And let's see, social media type. Yeah, we'll just call it social media. Sounds good. All right. So now that we have that, I can come up here and set a type, person.socialmedia equals social media type dot
Google Plus.
Google Plus. Okay.
It's hiding from someone.
Yeah. It's still in beta, but it's going to be big someday. Okay. So now let's take a look and see what we get. So Bob Woodward, age 27, he's a big Google Plus fan. So social media, that's looking pretty good. Okay, well, what happens if we don't assign a value? Any ideas?
We didn't put a default, so nothing.
So let's see what happens. Facebook.
Everybody has
They're
Facebook.
cheating on
Everybody's
that too?
Facebook.
By default,
If you don't
Or you get Facebook.
if you don't set one, you get with your social security number. Now you also get Facebook. So maybe that's not what we want exactly. And the problem there is because our social media types, they start at 0 and the default value for an int is 0, it's going to be Facebook. So we could do a couple of things here. We could go and add like a none and equals 0 and then start it there. Or we can go back to the person class and we can make it nullable. So let's go that route. I'll put a question mark behind the social media type and make it nullable. Now when I run this guy, let's see what we get. Social media, nothing there. That's better. Okay, that's pretty cool. One other thing I noticed in the social media types is these aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Could a person have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google Plus all at the same time?
How many do you have?
How many do I have? I mostly have Twitter. I do have a YouTube account. I have a Facebook account that my wife manages for me, which is great.
That's dangerous.
And I do have a LinkedIn account. I do not have Pinterest. So, all right. But anyway, so the problem here is these aren't mutually exclusive. So this is going to introduce our next cool trick called flags, right? So in this next section is called Fun with Flags. Now in order to use flags though, we have to set some explicit values to the enumeration. And you'll notice a pattern here.
3, 4. What? Hey, you skipped through. Oh, man.
Making a big
8,
map.
what comes after
What are you
8?
doing?
16.
16,
You can't even
32,
binary? What's going on?
64, 128, and 37.
What?
What? I just seen if you're paying attention. Okay, 256. All right. So now, if we use this flags attribute, it's going to set these up so that we can use multiple at the same time. So let's go back and take a look at our program here, and I want to let this person have Twitter and Google Plus. So the way that we do that is we use a pipe operator. Say Twitter. So that pipe operator is a bitwise OR, and so we're now doing bitwise operations, and this kind of goes. This is the way back machine for some people.
Does it matter what order you put those in?
Doesn't really matter what order we put those in. So let's just run this real quick and see what we get.
Put duplicates in Facebook and Facebook, or pipe Facebook.
Or a one with a one is always.
Yeah, or is an or. I don't want to get into a huge bitwise thing here, but okay. So anyway, we've got this bitwise. What's kind of cool is look at social media now. When we output that, it outputs it as Twitter, Google Plus. So as many of those as we put in there.
Would that break if you hadn't done your particular numbering?
If we'd what?
Hadn't done the particular numbering?
You get some very strange results, yes. And here's the reason why. Let's take a look at what the actual value is by casting the person.social media, right? It's 10. So I don't remember what Twitter was and what Google Plus was. Does anybody remember what those values were? So let's see, Twitter is 2 and Google Plus is 8. So 8 plus 2 is 10. So the value that's actually stored in that property is an integer value of 10. So using bitwise operations, they're able to figure out which of those values they are. Okay, let's see. So let's say that we wanted to do some other cool bitwise operations in here. So we initially set Google Plus and Twitter, but then later on I want to do something like this. Person.socialmedia equals person.socialmedia plus, except I can't do a plus, I want to do the bitwise OR operator. I'm going to add social media type. Let's add Facebook for this guy.
Because everybody has Facebook.
So just like you would do like social media equals social media plus some value, in this case we can continue to use the OR operator to attach those, and trust me, that works. We won't run that one just yet. You can also do this. Remember, we can do, when we do this equals this plus something, we can also do plus equals. You can also do bitwise equals. Yeah, I know, right? Mind blown. We'll add Pinterest, because who doesn't have Pinterest? All right, let's run it and see if those actually worked. So I've added Facebook and Pinterest. So now he has Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus, and Pinterest. The value being stored is 43. Okay. So how could this be handy, or how can this be used? Anybody have any ideas of where this would be good? Think about it for a minute.
Make a method of goals.
Let's do something like this. Has Instagram equals person.socialmedia. So social media is a nullable type. So if with nullables, you can check for, does it have a value? And then after does it have a value, then I can go get the value, but that gets really long. If I did it correctly, I'd have an if has value, then in the if block I would say get the value, and then do a bunch of stuff. That's too much work. So we're going to introduce something called is referred to an Elvis operator in some place, but it's also called the, what is it called? The Null Conditional Operator. I don't know how many people have started using this. So now I've just bypassed the has value and value, and basically the question mark says, if it has a value, give me the value. If it doesn't, I'll just get null on that side of it. But what I really want to look at is, does it have a flag? Does this person have Instagram? Okay, and then we'll write console.writeLine has Instagram and see what happens. Now we know he doesn't have Instagram because we haven't given it, so it says false. So what if we change Pinterest to Instagram? Now it says true. Okay, so that's a cool little feature that they have. If you have something that's a flag, an enumeration that's flags, you'll get this .hasFlag. You can pass in one of the enumerations and say, hey, does he have this value? There's lots of other ways you can do it, but that's a pretty good one. What if I want to subtract a value off? Well, you can do this. Social media. Let's see, how do I subtract a value? I guess you could and equals, is it and equals? And then say not So I'm going to take off his Facebook. That's kind of crazy syntax, but it's an and, but it's not it.
Not supposed to be an exclamation point.
Yeah, not in bitwise operations. It's that tilde. So let's see if it took Facebook off. Good, it took Facebook off. So that's one way to do it. There are other ways you could do it as well. You can do things like, you could just say minus equals, and cast it as an integer. That'd probably do the same thing. And it does. All right, so we don't need to go deep into bitwise operations. So, okay. What we want to do is, on this has Instagram thing, instead of writing true or false, that's not really easy to read, we'll say if the person has Instagram, right, then we'll do console.writeLine. I'm working as fast as I can. Instagram. Okay. So console.writeLine person has Instagram. Uh-oh, what's going on over here? It says the resultant type is a nullable bool question mark. So then I'd have to do this kind of nonsense, right? Has value and has Instagram.value is also true, then do that. Okay, that works, but that's kind of stinky. I don't like that. There's a better option for us to use. We can do get value or default. That's kind of cool. On nullable types, you can say get value or default in that case, and that would work. There's another option we could use here. We could use the null coalescing operator. And the null coalescing operator is this. If this variable is null, then just pass false. So that's another way we could do that. So I want to use, in this case, the null coalescing operator, but I don't want to put it there. I'm going to put it up here. And that keeps this nice and clean. So all my messy stuff is up on this line. I'm using the null conditional, or what we call the Elvis operator. I think it has something to do with his hair. And then the null coalescing operator, pass a false, if that whole first part of the argument it happens to turn into null. Okay? So we'll write that, and we should see person has Instagram. Now it's getting a little hard to read some of that. So here's the next cool little tip or trick that we could do. If you spend much time in the console, you might want to do something like this. Green, console color dot green. Okay, so now we're going to output that as green. When we're done, we're going to take the console colors, and to speed things along, I'm just going to copy and paste this in from my little scripty thing. Now let's run it and see how it looks. Oh, that's easier to read. Now that person has Instagram kind of pops, right? Pretty cool. If you want to reset the colors, you can just do like a console.reset color, and that'll set it back to default. But we like that blue, it's pretty cool. Let's keep it. All right, one more quick thing on social media type. This works great because most of us can count binary up to like 256. How far can you go? 256. What's after that? 512,
1024.
2048,
4096,
4096,
8192.
8192. That's about where we stop, right? Okay. Well, that might be a little bit too hard to do. So let's use a bitwise shift operator to represent this instead. Because using a shift operator, on the right side, we just have to count, right?
Yeah, but how far can you count by ones?
I can go to 18.
How many fingers does
Is that the right direction?
You're out of time, by the way.
Whoops. Now you made me mess up. Okay.
What if there's a common collection of these?
Okay, so then, one other cool thing we can do here, I'll show this real quick, is we'll say combinations can be in the enum2. Well, what does that mean? Enum2. So let's try it. We'll create a new category called most popular.
Need a spell check in here.
Whatever. Okay. So you can OR those together. So these values up here, you can OR those together and make a new value called most popular. So if I go back to person here, and let's just set this up here to equals social media type dot most popular. And then I don't need to worry about setting Facebook here because it should be set. We don't need to take Facebook off. Now if we run it, the user has most popular. What were the most popular again? Oh, Instagram was one of those, so I don't even need to put Instagram in here. But if we add another type, let's say what was not in the most popular, Pinterest. Let's just see if it. So he has Instagram, he has the most popular ones and Pinterest in there, but those individual values are still inside of that enum, but it's just represented by most popular. Okay, I think. Okay, one more quick one before we go. I know we're a little over time, but we started a little late, so we'll end a little bit late. Let's do one quick thing here. This will be a handy one for you. Let's do something crazy, like let's set title equal to null and see what happens. Well, I can tell you what's going to happen. Actually, before we do all that, I need to create one. Let's move all this stuff out into a test person method so you can kind of see this work. So I'll take all of this stuff in here, out, and put it inside the test person. And then in here, we'll call test person. And inside of here, I happen to know that if I set title to null, it's going to throw an exception because remember, we're checking title to see if it has Mr. in it. And we're just doing a dot replace. Well, there's a good chance if that's null and I go to do a dot replace, it's going to blow up on me. So I'm going to wrap this in a try catch because I know this is going to throw an error. Okay. And this is a little contrived, but go with me on this. And I'm just going to throw this back up, right? And then up here, I'm going to wrap this in a try catch and say try. If I call test person, and there's an error that's caught, we'll say catch exception, and then I'm going to do a console.writeLine. And what I really care about is the stack trace. I want to know where this error is really happening. So if we run this real quickly, we'll see, sorry guys, we'll see that it's throwing an error at program.cs line 44 inside of test person. And so that's, if you look at that, that's not terribly helpful. If you look at line 44, that's where the error is throwing. It doesn't show me where the actual error is happening down below. So anybody know how I can fix this? So this is what you have to do. Don't throw EX, just throw. Now if we change that and we run this again, you'll see you get a full stack trace here, which will help you find the problem, which is all the way back in person.cs line 79. So if I go back to person, CS line 79, we'll see what's happening is that incoming string is null, and we're not checking for null, and it's going to throw an error. So that was just a quick trip, how to get a full stack trace. Sometimes if we make that mistake and we throw we catch the exception, we throw that instead of just using throw, it'll hide your stack trace from you. So we didn't get through all of them, but that's a handful of tips and tricks for today. Thanks everybody. I will post this on Integration Point, and you can walk through it, and the rest of it will be there, and you can kind of look at some of the cool tips and tricks. So thanks guys.